In this video, I will show you how to rewire a 150cc go-kart from scratch. That will include how to use a multimeter, identify all parts, and make tests as I redo the wiring harness. I will follow a plan I make, and the link for the information are in the description if you want to follow along. This is the basic plan to start the machine. I did not include headlight, speedometer, and accessories as they are not needed to start your machine. I will make a separate video for that. This is suitable for almost all 150cc go-kart, including the Ace Maxxam 150, Kart Talon 150, Hammerhead 150, Trailmaster 150, and any go-kart that come with a GY6 150. Subscribe, like, share, and comments. Thanks. The battery, you have a positive and a negative. The ignition switch have three positions: off, on, and start. The red wire will go to the plus 12 volts of the battery. The white wire will go to the accessories and also to power the CDI. The green wire will go to the solenoid. For the CDI, and this is a DC CDI, and the wiring I'm giving you right now is only good for a DC CDI. Starting from the bottom left and going counterclockwise, the pin number 1 will be ground. The pin number 2 is not connected. The pin number 3 is 12 volt positive. The pin number 4 is the kill switch. The pin number 5 is the ignition coil, and the pin number 6 is the pickup coil. This is the stop button, also known as the kill switch. The order for the wire on this one does not matter. The pin 1 is ground, and the pin number 2 will go to the kill switch on the CDI. The ignition coil, the green pin is ground. The black received the signal from the CDI. The regulator, starting from the bottom left and going counterclockwise again, the pin number 1 is going to the stator. The pin number 2 is ground. Pin number 3 is going to the stator again. And pin number 4 is the 12 volt positive. The stator, the green wire is going to ground. The yellow wire will go to the regulator. The white wire will go to the regulator. The blue-white wire is actually the pickup coil and will go to the CDI. The red-black is not in use. The choke, but in reality an enricher. Yellow is going to the stator, and the green wire is going to the resistor. The resistor, the metal casing, as you will bolt it in the electrical box, will be used as ground, and the green wire is going to the enricher. The starter solenoid. The green-red wire is ground, and the yellow-red wire goes to the ignition switch. The 2 bolts on the top. One is going to the battery, the other one is going to the starter. In this case, the order does not matter. The starter. The casing of the starter is actually grounded on the engine as you bolt it on. The terminal is going to the starter solenoid. The fuse. One side goes to the battery positive, and the other side goes to the regulator and also the ignition switch. In this video, between every step, I will use a multimeter to check what I just did is working properly. I will use the voltage test to see if I have 12 volt, and I will also check if I have continuity between my wire. To test the 12 volt DC, I will put the multimeter at 20 volt DC and put the two leads on, and we have 12 volts. For the continuity test, I will put it at the little buzzer. I will also change the lead from this side to that side as it is on that multimeter, and as soon as I will touch those two wires, it will tell me that I've got continuity when it beep. If it don't beep, that means the wire you're testing right now is actually not touching. I'll use this one right now for the only purpose that the LCD is bigger and also make it easier for the camera to catch up the reading. So now I'll set this one at 20 volt DC, same as the other one, and just test my voltage. In this case, for the continuity test, I can just switch it here, and this multimeter used the same two lead. So now if I touch those two wires, it will beep. And that's about it for the functionality that we will use for the purpose of putting this buggy together. Let's start with the beginning. At this point, the only thing I did was just to install every electrical component, the engine, and make sure everything was in line and ready to get wire. Now let's go through every single wire. This one right here is coming from the enricher on the carburetor. This wire right here is coming from the stator, and also, as we know now, the pickup coil wire. This is the wire coming from the starter, who's right here under and plugged to this lead here. If we go through this one here is the solenoid that will engage the starter, the ignition coil, the regulator, and the CDI. In the dash, we have the ignition switch and the kill switch. As for all the rest, speedometer, headlight, turn signal, and any other accessories you have, you do not need those to start your machine. Let's start with the beginning. First of all, I will plug the battery, also the ground, and bring the power to the machine. And after that, I will test everything to make sure that what I just did actually is correct and working. At this point, the only wire I plug will be the positive here, coming all around, coming in the box, and will connect to the top starter solenoid. I also have this one, who will eventually goes to the front for the ignition switch. And here's the ground, coming from here, going around, and is grounded on the engine. Usually it used the bolt right beside it, but for the purpose of the video, I'm just putting it right here in the front. And now I will test everything to make sure everything is working fine. Let's make a continuity test to make sure that what we just did is actually working. Let's test if everything is working. Starting with the battery. We do have 12 volts. Between the battery and our new connection, we do also have 12 volt, and the ground also have 12 volts. Now we will take the power from this wire right here and bring it to the ignition switch to the red wire, so we have power to the switch. In this video, I will use the proper connector for any part of the machine, and I'll also use the crimp tool that are available on Maxxam Parts website. Link will be in the description. And also, as you crimp your wire, make sure that the red part is crimping on the top part, and the bottom part here will crimp on the wire itself, and will give you better lifetime on your wire and make sure that everything is connected properly and will stay in place longer. As you wire your machine, between every step you should disconnect the ground like I did here. So at this point we can just connect everything, make sure that we don't have spark as we do it. And also previously in the video I put a ground on this one, so I was bringing the ground from this part to the engine itself. At this point I need to ground the entire machine, so now I took a wire from actually the exact same place on the engine and bring it here to the regulator. At this point the entire machine is ground. The problem with the previous ground is I only ground the machine, and all that, or the machine itself is on bushing, so you don't have a good connection. The next step I did is actually to plug my red wire here temporarily, because I will also need to take power from this, the regulator and bring it to this wire, so it will charge the battery and also give power to the switch and keep everything power on as the machine run. Now, starting from the same red wire here, I give it a little bit of loose and also tape it around temporarily as I was doing the wiring, and make sure that everything will be in place correctly and I will have enough wire to make it work. At this point I just connect the connector right in, match it with the red wire, and now we will test if it works. Let's test our ground first. Now it is safe to say that the entire machine will be ground, as all the bare metal have continuity. Let's see if we have 12 volt coming to the switch and also coming out of the switch. So now I'll turn the key to the first click, or the accessories if you want to. I'll ground myself, touch the red wire that is coming in with voltage, so this one is good. And I'll also test the one coming out, who will be the white wire, and I also have 12 volt. Now if I turn the key off, I should not have any power left in this prong, and I'm at 0. So that means everything is working. On the next step, I will plug the starter solenoid. I'll take the yellow red, bring it to the green wire in the front on the ignition switch. This one here will be ground. This one's already plugged on the battery previously, and this one is actually the starter itself. For this step, as I stated before, I plug the starter relay, but unfortunately this wire is yellow red, this one is green red. So I do not have those wire, but I do have yellow wire and green wire. To mark the wire, I use some heat shrink. Heat shrink are usually used to cover a connection like this one, to make sure that the wire is not touching any ground or any place that you're not supposed to. In this case, I'm using it to mark. So now, if I unplug this connection, remove anything, I will be able to ID that wire, yellow, red, with the yellow, red on this side. This one is green, red, and I have the green, red on the other side. It just makes it easier to trace your wire. So now let's jump to how I connect it. This wire here goes to the front, to the ignition switch. This one, I create its own ground. Usually they kind of mix match all those together, but in my case, I put a single every time to a ground. It make it easier later. If you have some problem with this part, you can just remove this ground, switch it, and it will work. Now I also have the positive coming from the battery that I switch place because of this cover that need to be in this particular position. So now this one's coming from the battery, this one is going to the starter. As for the front, I have a green wire coming out. So now I did the exact same thing again. I put a green heat shrink, and on the other side of it, I put a red yellow that match with the one in the back. So in the same case, if anything goes wrong with the machine, later I can displug this plug, remove anything I want, and I will be able to say, okay, the green wire here goes with the green, the red goes with the red, and keep going this way. So that's a way that I found to make it easier to trace the wire. And also, as you cannot buy any of those wire or don't want to spend the money just for one wire, it's an easy way to fix that problem. Now, if everything I did is actually working properly, as soon as I will turn the key to the start position, the engine should spin. And we should hear it. And indeed it worked. The CDI. The CDI, you will need power from the ignition switch in the front. So we'll bring a wire from the front to the CDI. You also need to ground it. And I'll probably use the exact same one here. My green wire going to this one here. Also, you'll need your pickup coil. That is the blue and white wire coming from the left side there. And after that, we'll get an exit one who will go to that black prong here for the ignition coil. And the last but not the least will be the stop switch. The stop switch will come from the front, bring it here to stop the CDI from sparking. Now as I'm doing it, accordingly to the plan, I have two black wire coming. If you remember at the beginning, I'm using a heat shrink. Unfortunately, at this point, I don't know which one is which. So now what I did is I use a clamp just to clamp the wire on the frame of the machine. Now let's go on the back. Now on the back, as you can see, I disconnect the ground from the battery again, because as you test, sometimes you want to remove the ground so you don't cause any more problem. So now I will touch the first wire. I've got nothing. But the second one, that means the wire in the front and this one match. The CDI is now plugged. So now I'll go through all the wires again, just to show you every step. So the red wire, again, coming from the battery, the black-white wire supplying the power to the CDI, the yellow-red wire goes to the starter solenoid in this case. So now that's the only three wire you need to start your machine. In the future, you will have to plug your headlight, speedometer, and all turn signal. The power will come from this one, and that's the only wire you will use, because as you turn your key to the first position, that's the only wire that will have power. You can also use the red one. Unfortunately, in this case, that means your light would actually work when the switch is at the off position, which is not a good thing, because if you forget your light, the battery will be dead. As for the starter solenoid, this wire right here is the only one that you will put at this position, because when you're at the start position, you want power to this one, but soon you release your key to accessories, this wire is losing the power. So that's why. So now when you wire a switch, red wire to the battery, this wire here to the starter solenoid, all the other connection, accessories or anything you have will go to this one and will be supplied with power when you turn your key to accessories. As for the kill switch, I ground my kill switch here under and use again the black and white wire to send to that CDI in the back to stop the firing process and actually kill the engine. In this case, you might have noticed that this wire and this one also use the same color. To ID your wire, the plug here, use a wider connector, and this one will use not the same size, it's smaller. I think it's a 2.8 for the width. So you can't mix it. You can take this wire and put it in this one because it will not fit. Now the wiring on the CDI itself, the green wire connecting to this one goes to the ground. The black wire here is the ignition switch in the front when I turn it to the first position or accessories. The black-white wire here is the kill switch. The black-yellow goes right here down to the ignition coil. The ignition coil is also grounded. The blue-white wire is coming from the pickup coil, and that's it for now. Now let's test the CDI for the power. As you notice again, the ground is not connected to the battery. Now as I'm checking the power for the CDI, I will do the continuity test, but in this case I'm testing the positive, not the ground. So now I'll put one lead on the positive, and on this side here, I put a little staple in it to make it easier for me to test. And as soon as I will touch this one, if everything is right, because my key's at accessories right now, I should have a beep. So now it means it worked. But let's see if I turn the key to the off position. I should not have power on that one anymore. And I don't. Now as I know, the kill switch is actually black-white, so I put the staples on this connection. I also switch the lead from the multimeter to the ground, and I will put this one right here. At this point I don't have anything, but if I go push the switch in the front, the multimeter should beep at the same time. And it works. So that means my connection, those two connections so far are good. So let's jump to the next one. So this one I will test the ground. The ground is the green wire. So now one lead on the green and my staple again on the green. And soon I touch this one, I should have the same beep. So now the only thing we test so far is, do I have power to my CDI? The answer is yes, because the positive is coming and working, the ground is working, the kill switch is working. As for the other two wire, they're a little bit more complicated to test. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna plug everything back, put my ground on the battery, and I will go turn the key, switch the camera to the spark plug. So as I turn the key, I will be able to see the spark on the machine itself. So as for the final test to see if the CDI is working, the ignition coil and also the pickup coil, I'll just pretend starting the engine. As the spark plug is not in it, well, the engine won't start, but at least we will see if the spark plug spark. So now as the spark plug actually spark, that means the engine would start at this point. Unfortunately, we still have a few things that I will show you in a second. I'm recording this video at the end of the wiring plan after I test everything. So now I realized that the stop button wasn't working. So now if I follow the plan, it was right. Unfortunately, it's not working. So now I update the electrical plan that you will get the link in the description. And now for the wiring, the blue, white, and the black, white need to be together. This one will be your pickup coil. This one is the kill switch. So now at this point, when you push the kill switch, it stops the signal from the pickup coil. And now will actually kill the engine. At this point, I've got a functional machine for a short period of time. As the enricher is not working, as the machine is cold, the machine will work. As the machine warm up, it will turn that the machine will be too rich and will actually stall. So now on the next step, I will plug the stator to the regulator and also the enricher to make sure that the machine will run and will properly run. On the last one, I'll take the plug from the stator. The green will be ground, the yellow and white will be the alternate current from the stator. Those two will go to the regulator. The next wire right here, the ground here, will connect to the resistor, and the resistor will connect to the ground. As for the yellow one, it will also connect with this one here on the stator itself. And now I should have two left wire. One will be the ground of the regulator, who will come to this ground, and also the positive coming out of this one and going to our previous wire. So now I'll connect all that, and after that we should have a stable and functioning machine. On this step, I twist the wire together, use my soldering iron just to put some solder on it. So now I will just slip that heat shrink on top of it at this place, so now the wire can still move. Heat it. And we do have a functional wire. Everything is sealed. Just don't overheat it, otherwise it will start melting. But at this point, it should work. As it gets busy in the electrical box, I just took all the component out. So now I can show it on the table to make it easier to go through all the wire without seeing all the other wire around. So now I do have the stator, the regulator, the resistor, and also the enricher. So now, starting from the stator, I'll go around, and the green wire coming out will be ground in the electrical box. At this time, it's only the resistor, but all that will be plugged together in the electrical box. The white wire is coming out, going into the regulator. The yellow wire is coming out also, going in the regulator, but also in the enricher. At this point, it will go through the enricher, come back to the green wire, and on this side, I put it green and black because it's not connect directly to the ground. So now it will have to go through the resistor. The resistor will be ground. And the last wire will be the red one coming out of the regulator to actually charge the battery at 12 volts. Now I plug everything together the same way I show it on the table, and I spray some gas in the carburetor just to make a test to make sure the engine will start, and we'll see if everything is working. The last thing to do will be just to sort out all those wires Use some tie wrap to put them together. Put some loom from the front to the back to make sure that all the wires are protected. And if you give me a second, I'll be able to show you the result. For the final, there's the loom coming from the front and will go to the back. And also use some tie wrap just to tie wrap everything. Make sure your wires are not loose so you won't break them. And you should be fine. The loom coming from the back come right here, so all my wires are together. The next step will be to put the electric cover on it. As you put the electric cover, there's 2 bolts coming through. So make sure your wires are not in the way, and you can just reinstall your cover on. Last step will be to put the bolt and you're ready to go. As for the final test, I'll start the engine. Test my kill switch, and I also test so everything is working. If you follow the plan that I gave you, everything should work at the end exactly the same as what I've got right now.